The story behind The Wolf of Wall Street began long before cameras started rolling. Its origins can be traced to the extraordinary rise and fall of Jordan Belfort, a stockbroker whose career became one of the most infamous examples of financial fraud in American history. Belfort's life was filled with astonishing success, reckless excess, criminal behavior, and eventual imprisonment. Unlike many stories about white-collar crime, his experiences were so outrageous that they often seem more like fiction than reality. This unbelievable quality would eventually become one of the film's greatest strengths, allowing audiences to witness events that felt almost impossible while remaining grounded in actual history. The foundation for the film was Belfort's own memoir, The Wolf of Wall Street, which was published in 2007. The autobiography chronicled his transformation from an ambitious young salesman into the founder of Stratton Oakmont, a brokerage firm that specialized in fraudulent stock sales and manipulated financial markets. Belfort wrote with an unapologetic voice, presenting his story with humor, honesty, arrogance, and self-awareness. Rather than portraying himself as a traditional villain seeking redemption, he openly admitted to his greed, addictions, and destructive behavior while inviting readers into a world of unimaginable wealth and excess. The memoir quickly attracted attention within Hollywood because it offered something different from conventional crime stories. Financial crimes are often difficult to dramatize since they revolve around paperwork, phone calls, and legal complexities. Belfort's life, however, was filled with extravagant parties, luxury yachts, helicopters, mansions, expensive cars, drug abuse, and bizarre personal adventures. His memoir combined the excitement of a gangster story with the setting of Wall Street, creating an opportunity for filmmakers to explore greed through an entirely different lens. Hollywood producers recognized that the memoir possessed enormous cinematic potential. Before the film reached its final creative team, several production companies expressed interest in adapting the book. During the early development stages, different actors and directors were associated with the project. Development in Hollywood often involves multiple versions of a screenplay, numerous creative discussions, and years of negotiation before a film receives official approval. The Wolf of Wall Street was no exception. One of the earliest major supporters of the project was Leonardo DiCaprio. By the late 2000s, DiCaprio had established himself as one of Hollywood's most respected actors. Having already collaborated with acclaimed directors across multiple genres, he was searching for challenging characters that pushed beyond traditional heroic roles. Belfort fascinated him because he represented an individual who was simultaneously charismatic, intelligent, manipulative, hilarious, and deeply immoral. Rather than portraying a conventional criminal who relied on violence, Belfort used persuasion, confidence, and salesmanship as his primary weapons. DiCaprio secured the rights to Belfort's memoir through his production company. His involvement dramatically increased the likelihood that the adaptation would move forward. As both producer and eventual lead actor, he became one of the project's strongest creative advocates. His interest wasn't simply based on portraying a famous criminal. Instead, he believed the story reflected broader themes about capitalism, ambition, corruption, and the seductive nature of wealth. Finding the right screenwriter proved equally important. The responsibility eventually went to Terrence Winter, a writer already known for his work on The Sopranos and later Boardwalk Empire. Winter had developed a reputation for writing morally complex characters who operated within criminal worlds while remaining surprisingly relatable. His understanding of organized crime, flawed protagonists, and dark humor made him an ideal choice for adapting Belfort's memoir. Winter faced a significant challenge from the beginning. Belfort's autobiography contained countless outrageous stories, many of which stretched credibility even though they had actually occurred. Compressing years of events into a coherent screenplay required difficult decisions about pacing, structure, and emphasis. Rather than attempting to include every memorable incident, Winter focused on constructing a narrative that illustrated Belfort's meteoric rise, unchecked success, gradual moral collapse, and eventual downfall. One of the screenplay's defining creative choices was maintaining Belfort's first-person narration. Much like the memoir itself, the film allows Belfort to speak directly to the audience. This narrative device creates an unusual relationship between the viewer and the protagonist. Instead of observing Belfort from a distance, audiences become almost like accomplices, hearing his explanations, jokes, and justifications throughout the story. This technique encourages viewers to experience the excitement of his lifestyle before confronting its devastating consequences. The screenplay also embraced comedy far more than many expected. On paper, the subject matter involves securities fraud, financial corruption, money laundering, addiction, and criminal investigations. These topics could easily have resulted in a serious legal drama similar to other Wall Street films. Instead, Winter recognized that Belfort's own storytelling style relied heavily on absurd humor. The screenplay amplified this quality without losing sight of the darker implications beneath the laughter. As development continued, Martin Scorsese became attached as director. His involvement transformed industry expectations almost immediately. Scorsese had already built a legendary career exploring ambitious men consumed by power, greed, violence, and self-destruction. Films such as Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Casino, and The Aviator demonstrated his fascination with characters whose extraordinary success eventually led to catastrophic failure. Jordan Belfort fit naturally within this thematic tradition, even though he operated in corporate offices instead of criminal organizations. Interestingly, Scorsese had briefly stepped away from the project during development. When Martin Scorsese agreed to direct The Wolf of Wall Street, he was not entering unfamiliar territory. By 2013, he had spent more than 4 decades exploring the psychology of ambitious, deeply flawed men who chase power with obsessive determination. His filmography had repeatedly examined individuals who rise to extraordinary heights before their own desires ultimately destroy them. Whether the setting was organized crime, professional boxing, high society, or the entertainment industry, Scorsese consistently returned to stories about excess, temptation, and moral compromise. Jordan Belfort represented another variation of this recurring fascination, but unlike many of Scorsese's previous protagonists, Belfort's battlefield was not the streets or the underworld. It was the financial markets, where words, confidence, and manipulation replaced guns as the primary tools of conquest. One of the most important aspects of Scorsese's vision was that he never intended The Wolf of Wall Street to function as a conventional cautionary tale. Traditional morality stories often establish clear heroes and villains, guiding audiences toward obvious conclusions about right and wrong. Scorsese deliberately avoided this approach. Instead, he wanted viewers to experience Belfort's world from the inside, feeling both its exhilarating appeal and its terrifying consequences. Rather than standing outside the story and judging the characters, the audience would be immersed in their perspective, becoming almost intoxicated by the same energy that drove Belfort and his employees. This approach reflected one of Scorsese's long-standing beliefs about cinema. Throughout his career, he has argued that films should observe human behavior rather than preach about it. He has often expressed the idea that audiences are intelligent enough to draw their own conclusions without being instructed what to think. As a result, his films frequently avoid simplistic moral lessons. Instead, they present complicated people making destructive choices while allowing viewers to wrestle with their own reactions. The Wolf of Wall Street became perhaps the purest expression of this philosophy. Many viewers expected a straightforward condemnation of financial corruption. Instead, Scorsese delivered something much more unsettling. The film celebrates the excitement of Belfort's rise, while simultaneously exposing its ugliness. The audience laughs, feels excitement, and becomes captivated before gradually recognizing how completely morality has disappeared from the characters' lives. This emotional contradiction was entirely intentional. Scorsese has often described cinema as an emotional experience before it is an intellectual one. Rather than presenting ideas through speeches or explanations, he prefers allowing images, editing, music, and performance to communicate emotional truths. This philosophy shaped every creative decision throughout The Wolf of Wall Street. Instead of lengthy discussions about economics or financial regulations, the film overwhelms viewers with non-stop movement, noise, color, music, and energy. The audience experiences Belfort's success emotionally rather than academically. The director understood that Jordan Belfort's greatest strength was not financial intelligence alone. It was charisma. Belfort possessed an extraordinary ability to persuade people to trust him, admire him, and follow him regardless of the consequences. Scorsese realized that the film itself needed to possess that same seductive quality. If viewers immediately rejected Belfort as a monster, they would never understand why thousands of employees worked for him or why countless investors handed over their money. The film therefore adopts Belfort's own salesmanship, seducing the audience through style before revealing the emptiness beneath the surface. This idea connects directly to Scorsese's admiration for classic American cinema. Throughout his career, he has drawn inspiration from filmmakers who believe that style should reinforce theme rather than merely create visual beauty. Every camera movement, every musical cue, every editing decision serves the larger emotional purpose of the story. In The Wolf of Wall Street, the extravagant filmmaking reflects Belfort's extravagant personality. The camera rarely sits still because Belfort himself never stops moving. The editing rarely slows because his life operates at a relentless pace. The visual language becomes an extension of the protagonist's state of mind. Scorsese's Catholic upbringing has also profoundly influenced nearly every film he has directed, even those that appear far removed from religion. Many of his stories explore concepts such as temptation, guilt, sin, redemption, and moral responsibility. Although The Wolf of Wall Street contains very little overt religious symbolism, these themes remain central beneath its outrageous surface. Jordan Belfort is presented almost as a man who has created his own religion. Wealth replaces spirituality. Consumption replaces purpose. Money becomes the ultimate measure of success, morality, and identity. Employees worship financial achievement with the same devotion that religious believers might reserve for sacred ideals. Belfort himself functions almost like a charismatic preacher, delivering motivational speeches that inspire absolute loyalty among his followers. Scorsese was fascinated by this transformation of capitalism into a belief system where profit justifies every action. Unlike traditional crime organizations, Belfort's empire operated within offices that resembled legitimate businesses. This fascinated Scorsese because it blurred the line between respectable society and organized criminal behavior. Throughout his career, he had frequently explored criminal groups with strict codes of loyalty and hierarchy. In The Wolf of Wall Street, he recognized similar structures within the corporate environment. Stratton Oakmont functions almost like a gang, complete with rituals, recruitment, celebrations, punishments, and unquestioning loyalty to its leader. Scorsese's visual style also played an enormous role in realizing his artistic goals. He has long preferred fluid camera movements that immerse audiences directly into scenes rather than observing events from a detached perspective. The Wolf of Wall Street contains countless tracking shots that move through crowded offices, extravagant parties, luxurious mansions, and chaotic celebrations. These shots create the sensation that viewers are physically present inside Belfort's world, instead of merely watching it unfold. Unlike fantasy, science fiction, or historical epics, The Wolf of Wall Street does not create an entirely fictional universe. Instead, it constructs a heightened version of a real world that once existed, transforming familiar locations into a playground of limitless ambition, excess, and corruption. Martin Scorsese's challenge was not inventing new rules for an imaginary society, but revealing the hidden culture that thrived behind the polished image of Wall Street during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Through careful production design, location choices, cinematography, costumes, sound, and character behavior, the film creates an immersive environment where greed becomes normal, morality becomes optional, and success is measured solely by wealth. The setting itself becomes one of the film's most important characters. Every office, mansion, nightclub, restaurant, yacht, and trading floor contributes to the audience's understanding of Jordan Belfort's world. The environments are not simply backgrounds where scenes take place. They actively reinforce the values, priorities, and psychology of the people who inhabit them. The film begins in New York during one of the most financially aggressive periods in American history. The late 20th century saw enormous growth in financial markets, investment banking, and stock trading. Wall Street had become a symbol of wealth and opportunity, attracting ambitious young people from across the country who dreamed of becoming millionaires. Popular culture increasingly celebrated financial success, presenting stockbrokers and corporate executives as modern conquerors capable of accumulating fortunes through intelligence, confidence, and risk-taking. Scorsese uses this historical backdrop not simply as context, but as the foundation for the film's entire universe. The audience enters a society where enormous wealth appears attainable, where aggressive salesmanship is rewarded, and where ethical boundaries have become increasingly blurred. The financial system functions almost like an ecosystem with its own language, rituals, customs, and hierarchy. One of the earliest environments introduced is the prestigious brokerage firm where Jordan Belfort begins his career. Compared to everything that follows, this office appears relatively restrained and professional. Employees wear expensive suits, conversations revolve around financial markets, and success seems linked to discipline and knowledge. This initial setting establishes what audiences traditionally expect from Wall Street. It presents the financial industry as organized, structured, and respectable. However, this illusion quickly collapses. After the stock market crash, Belfort enters the world of penny stocks, where the atmosphere changes dramatically. Small brokerage firms operate with fewer regulations, less prestige, and far greater opportunities for manipulation. The physical spaces become less polished, reflecting a different kind of financial culture. Offices appear crowded, noisy, and chaotic. Instead of sophisticated investment professionals, Belfort discovers aggressive salespeople willing to exploit vulnerable clients for enormous commissions. This transition is crucial because it marks the audience's first glimpse into the hidden world beneath mainstream finance. Rather than abandoning realism, the film reveals another layer of the same economic system, suggesting that corruption often exists just beyond the respectable surface. The creation of Stratton Oakmont represents the true birth of the film's unique world. From this point onward, the office ceases to resemble a conventional workplace. Instead, it evolves into something resembling a combination of a casino, nightclub, fraternity house, and criminal headquarters. The physical design of Stratton Oakmont reflects its culture perfectly. Open office spaces allow constant visibility, encouraging competition among brokers. Employees celebrate successful sales publicly, reinforcing the idea that financial achievement deserves immediate recognition. Loud music fills the building, replacing quiet professionalism with nonstop excitement. Decorations become increasingly extravagant as the company grows richer. Money flows through the office almost like oxygen, influencing every interaction. Traditional corporate environments emphasize order, discipline, and efficiency. Stratton Oakmont values spectacle above everything else. The office constantly feels alive. People scream across trading floors. Phones ring endlessly. Employees celebrate massive commissions. Music blasts through speakers. Managers deliver motivational speeches. Champagne flows during working hours. Animals occasionally appear inside the building. Professional boundaries disappear completely. This sensory overload creates an environment where rational thinking becomes increasingly difficult. Employees are encouraged to act emotionally rather than analytically. The workplace transforms into a machine designed to generate excitement, confidence, and addiction. Environmental storytelling plays a major role throughout the film. Rather than explaining Belfort's success through dialogue alone, Scorsese allows locations to communicate his growing wealth visually. Early in the story, Belfort lives modestly. As his fortune expands, every new home becomes larger. Rooms become more spacious. Furniture becomes increasingly luxurious. Artwork becomes more expensive. Vehicles become more extravagant. These visual changes allow audiences to track Belfort's financial ascent without lengthy exposition. The houses themselves symbolize more than simple wealth. They represent isolation. Despite surrounding himself with increasingly valuable possessions, Belfort gradually distances himself from ordinary society. His homes become private kingdoms separated from everyday life. The larger his estate becomes, the fewer ordinary people remain within it. Friends, employees, business partners, and fellow millionaires replace normal social relationships. The film's treatment of transportation also contributes significantly to world building. Cars are never merely methods of travel. Luxury automobiles become status symbols. Helicopters demonstrate power. Private jets represent complete freedom from ordinary limitations. Massive yachts function almost like floating palaces. Movement itself becomes a display of wealth. Characters rarely travel discreetly. Every arrival announces financial success. Every vehicle communicates social status before its occupants even step outside. One of the reasons The Wolf of Wall Street remains such a fascinating film is because it refuses to fit neatly into a single genre. At first glance, it appears to be a biographical crime drama about financial fraud, but the deeper one examines the movie, the more complex its identity becomes. Martin Scorsese deliberately blends multiple genres together, allowing each one to support the others while constantly shifting the audience's expectations. The result is a film that can be hilarious one moment, disturbing the next, emotionally engaging shortly afterward, and socially critical throughout. Rather than choosing one storytelling style, The Wolf of Wall Street creates a unique cinematic experience by combining biography, black comedy, crime, drama, satire, and elements of psychological character study. The film's primary genre is the biographical film, often referred to simply as a biopic. Its foundation comes directly from the real-life experiences of Jordan Belfort, whose memoir provided the source material. Like many successful biographical films, it follows a recognizable structure: the rise of an ambitious individual, the period of extraordinary success, the gradual appearance of consequences, and the eventual downfall. This framework gives the audience a familiar narrative while leaving plenty of room for creative interpretation. However, unlike many traditional biopics, The Wolf of Wall Street does not attempt to document every stage of Belfort's life in equal detail. Instead, it focuses almost exclusively on the years that best illustrate his transformation into one of Wall Street's most notorious figures. Childhood, family history, and early personal development receive relatively little attention. The film assumes that Belfort's personality is best understood through his actions during his years of success, rather than through lengthy exploration of his upbringing. This selective approach distinguishes it from more conventional biographies, which often spend considerable time examining formative childhood experiences. Scorsese instead concentrates on the period where Belfort's ambitions, talents, flaws, and addictions collide most dramatically. The secondary genre is crime. At first, some viewers may not immediately recognize the film as a crime movie because it contains very little physical violence compared to classic gangster films. There are no bank robberies, large-scale shootouts, or organized assassinations. Instead, the crimes revolve around financial deception, securities fraud, money laundering, bribery, and manipulation. This shift is extremely significant. Traditional crime films often portray criminals operating outside respectable society. The Wolf of Wall Street presents criminals operating inside expensive office buildings while wearing designer suits. The weapons are not guns. They are telephones, sales scripts, contracts, persuasive language, confidence. Instead of stealing money through force, Belfort convinces people to surrender it willingly. This modern interpretation of criminal behavior expands the boundaries of the crime genre. It reminds audiences that enormous harm can occur without physical violence. Thousands of victims lose their savings while the perpetrators celebrate inside luxurious offices. Scorsese intentionally draws subtle parallels between Belfort's organization and the organized crime families featured in films such as Goodfellas and Casino. Both rely on loyalty. Both reward ambition. Both punish weakness. Both operate according to internal rules. Both generate enormous wealth through illegal activities. The primary difference lies in appearance. Gangsters wear expensive suits while meeting in restaurants. Stockbrokers wear expensive suits while working in offices. The similarities become increasingly obvious as the story unfolds. Another major genre influencing the film is black comedy. This may surprise viewers expecting a serious financial drama. Many of the movie's funniest scenes involve deeply disturbing behavior. Drug overdoses, public humiliation, marital conflict, corporate corruption, illegal business practices. These situations would normally produce tension or sadness. Instead, Scorsese often stages them with impeccable comedic timing. The famous sequence involving delayed reactions to quaaludes perfectly demonstrates black comedy. Jordan Belfort becomes physically incapable of controlling his body. His movements become absurd. His speech deteriorates. His desperate attempts to accomplish simple tasks create enormous laughter. Yet beneath the comedy lies genuine danger. He risks killing himself. He drives while heavily intoxicated. His judgment has completely collapsed. The audience laughs while simultaneously recognizing the seriousness of the situation. This uncomfortable balance defines black comedy. Humor emerges directly from human failure, moral collapse, and disastrous consequences. Satire represents another essential genre element. Throughout the film, Scorsese exaggerates certain behaviors not because they are unrealistic, but because highlighting their absurdity exposes deeper truths about society. The movie constantly satirizes the culture of limitless capitalism. Money becomes the ultimate measurement of human value. Employees celebrate financial success with almost religious enthusiasm. Corporate speeches resemble revival meetings. Luxury possessions function as symbols of personal worth. The satire extends beyond Jordan Belfort himself. His clients, his employees, his competitors, his friends, even law enforcement. Everyone exists within a larger economic system that places extraordinary importance on wealth. Rather than attacking one individual, the film questions an entire culture that rewards excess while often ignoring ethical responsibility. Importantly, the satire never becomes simplistic. Scorsese avoids presenting straightforward political arguments. Instead, he exposes contradictions. Audiences find themselves laughing at behavior they intellectually recognize as immoral. This emotional conflict forces viewers to examine their own fascination with wealth and success. The film also contains strong elements of psychological drama. Although external events drive much of the narrative, Belfort's internal transformation remains equally important. His growing addiction to money parallels his addiction to drugs. Neither pursuit ever satisfies him completely. Every success creates new desires. Every achievement raises expectations. Every victory demands something even larger. This endless cycle gradually reshapes his personality. The opening sequence of The Wolf of Wall Street is one of the most energetic, chaotic, and effective introductions in modern cinema. Within the first 10 to 15 minutes, Martin Scorsese accomplishes an extraordinary amount of storytelling. Rather than slowly introducing characters and allowing the audience to gradually understand the world, the film immediately throws viewers into Jordan Belfort's universe at full speed. The audience is bombarded with images of wealth, excess, drugs, sex, loud music, expensive cars, and outrageous workplace behavior before they have even learned the basic details of the story. This deliberate sensory overload serves a critical narrative purpose. It allows viewers to experience Belfort's world emotionally before they begin analyzing it intellectually. The opening immediately establishes one of the film's central ideas. Appearances can be incredibly seductive. The audience is introduced not to Jordan Belfort as a struggling young man, but to the empire he has built. Before hearing about his background or understanding how he became successful, viewers witness the incredible rewards of that success. Scorsese wants the audience to feel the attraction before confronting the consequences. The very first images introduce Stratton Oakmont, Belfort's brokerage firm. Instead of resembling a traditional financial institution, the office appears more like a carnival of unchecked capitalism. Employees cheer wildly, celebrate enormous commissions, throw money into the air, and engage in outrageous behavior that seems completely incompatible with professional business environments. The camera moves confidently through this chaos. Rather than observing events from a distance, it places viewers directly inside the action. People scream. Music blasts through the office. Phones ring constantly. Employees celebrate as though they have won championships instead of completing stock transactions. This immediately establishes that the movie will not portray Wall Street in the polished, elegant manner often associated with financial dramas. Instead, Scorsese presents a world driven by raw instinct. The office itself functions almost like a battlefield where victory is measured entirely by profit. Within moments, viewers understand that this environment operates according to its own rules. Traditional ideas of professionalism no longer apply. Immediately afterward, the audience is introduced to Jordan Belfort himself through narration. This narrative decision is extremely important. Rather than allowing another character to explain Belfort, Scorsese lets Belfort introduce himself. His confidence is obvious from his very first words. He does not apologize. He does not hesitate. He does not pretend to be humble. Instead, he speaks directly to the audience with complete authority. This direct address breaks the traditional barrier between film and viewer. Jordan is not simply telling his story. He is speaking directly to us. Almost immediately, viewers become participants rather than passive observers. This narration also establishes one of the film's defining storytelling techniques. Jordan frequently interrupts scenes, explains financial concepts, corrects assumptions, makes jokes, provides commentary. This conversational relationship continues throughout the film and creates an unusual sense of intimacy. Even though Jordan is an unreliable narrator, audiences instinctively trust him because he communicates with such confidence. That confidence becomes one of the film's major themes. Jordan's ability to persuade begins not with his clients, but with the audience itself. As the opening continues, Scorsese introduces the culture inside Stratton Oakmont through visual storytelling rather than lengthy exposition. Employees worship Jordan almost like a celebrity. His arrival commands immediate attention. People admire him, respect him, imitate him. The office resembles a kingdom where Jordan functions as both king and motivational speaker. This hierarchy becomes obvious long before anyone explicitly explains it. The environment itself communicates authority. Scorsese then introduces one of the movie's recurring themes, performance. Jordan is constantly performing. His speeches resemble theatrical productions. Sales calls resemble stage performances. Business meetings resemble sporting events. Everything inside Stratton Oakmont is exaggerated. Nothing feels ordinary. The employees are not simply selling stocks. They are selling excitement, confidence, dreams, status. Jordan himself behaves almost like an entertainer whose audience happens to be investors and employees. This connection between business and performance becomes one of the film's defining ideas. The audience quickly realizes that selling is not simply Jordan's profession. It is his identity. Another important element established during these opening minutes is excess. Nearly every image communicates abundance. Luxury cars, expensive watches, designer suits, large homes, beautiful models, private helicopters, champagne, drugs, massive offices. Scorsese intentionally overwhelms viewers with symbols of wealth. This visual strategy accomplishes two things simultaneously. First, it demonstrates the scale of Jordan's success. Second, it reveals that success alone is never enough. Everything must be bigger than before, more expensive, more extravagant. The concept of moderation simply does not exist within Jordan's world. The opening sequence also introduces humor almost immediately. Many viewers expecting a serious financial drama are surprised by the film's comedic tone. Scorsese understands that Jordan's world is so outrageous that realism naturally produces comedy. Employees celebrate with unbelievable enthusiasm. Office behavior becomes increasingly absurd. Jordan delivers outrageous observations with perfect confidence. The comedy serves an important purpose. Rather than distancing viewers from Jordan, it draws them closer. People naturally enjoy charismatic personalities. The humor encourages audiences to like Jordan before they begin questioning him. This emotional manipulation mirrors Jordan's own professional skills. Just as he persuades investors, the film persuades viewers. One of the most effective moments in the opening involves Jordan casually explaining how much money he earns. At its core, The Wolf of Wall Street is a film driven by conflict. While its extravagant parties, lavish lifestyles, and outrageous comedic moments often dominate public discussion, the story would not remain compelling without the constant presence of meaningful conflict. Martin Scorsese and screenwriter Terrence Winter carefully construct a narrative in which nearly every scene introduces a new obstacle, temptation, or consequence. Rather than relying on a single central problem, the film layers multiple forms of conflict on top of one another. Jordan Belfort faces external enemies, internal weaknesses, legal threats, personal betrayals, professional challenges, and psychological struggles simultaneously. These overlapping conflicts continually raise the stakes, ensuring that the audience remains engaged even during scenes that appear celebratory on the surface. The central conflict can be summarized simply. Jordan Belfort wants unlimited wealth, freedom, and power, while reality continually imposes limits that he refuses to accept. Everything else in the film grows from this single idea. Unlike many protagonists, Jordan is not fighting to survive. He is not seeking justice. He is not protecting innocent people. Instead, he wants more. More money, more influence, more excitement, more pleasure, more control. This endless pursuit creates a unique form of conflict because Jordan is rarely satisfied. Every victory immediately becomes the starting point for a new ambition. The first major conflict introduced is economic. When Jordan arrives on Wall Street as a young stockbroker, he dreams of becoming wealthy through legitimate means. However, almost immediately, the stock market crashes on Black Monday, destroying the brokerage firm where he has just begun working. This event is significant for several reasons. First, it establishes that Jordan's success will not follow a predictable path. Second, it demonstrates that even powerful financial institutions remain vulnerable to forces beyond individual control. Most importantly, it forces Jordan into unfamiliar territory. Instead of abandoning his ambitions, he searches for another opportunity. This search leads him into the world of penny stocks, where enormous commissions are available, but ethical standards are almost non-existent. Here, the first important internal conflict begins. Jordan discovers that he possesses extraordinary sales ability. He can persuade almost anyone to buy worthless investments. At first, he simply enjoys the challenge. Soon afterward, he begins enjoying the money. Eventually, he stops questioning whether what he is doing is morally acceptable. This gradual shift is one of the film's most important internal struggles. The audience watches Jordan choose ambition over ethics repeatedly. Importantly, these choices rarely appear dramatic in isolation. Each compromise seems relatively small. Each decision appears easy. Only later does the accumulation become obvious. This reflects how moral decline often occurs in real life. People rarely transform into corrupt individuals overnight. Instead, they make countless small decisions until corruption becomes normal. Jordan's greatest internal conflict revolves around self-control. Unlike many protagonists whose external enemies create most of the tension, Jordan increasingly becomes his own worst obstacle. His intelligence, his charisma, his confidence, his leadership abilities. These qualities help him build Stratton Oakmont. However, the same personality traits eventually undermine everything he creates. Confidence becomes arrogance. Ambition becomes greed. Risk-taking becomes recklessness. Optimism becomes denial. His strengths gradually transform into weaknesses. This psychological evolution creates continuous tension because viewers recognize dangers long before Jordan does. One of the defining characteristics of Jordan's personality is his inability to recognize limits. Every success convinces him that greater success remains possible. Every financial victory encourages even greater risks. Every escape from consequences reinforces the belief that he is untouchable. This illusion becomes one of the film's central conflicts. Reality repeatedly attempts to teach Jordan restraint. He refuses to learn. As a result, each lesson grows increasingly severe. Professional conflict also drives much of the narrative. Building Stratton Oakmont requires Jordan to recruit employees, train inexperienced salespeople, manage rapid expansion, and maintain extraordinary levels of motivation. Although he appears naturally suited to leadership, success creates new challenges. As the company grows larger, maintaining control becomes increasingly difficult. New employees bring new problems. Greater profits attract greater scrutiny. Expanding operations require increasingly complex criminal activity. Growth itself becomes a source of conflict. Success does not simplify Jordan's life. It complicates it. Every achievement creates larger responsibilities while simultaneously increasing legal risks. The conflict between loyalty and self-interest also becomes increasingly important. Jordan builds Stratton Oakmont by inspiring remarkable devotion among his employees. Many of them admire him almost unconditionally. They see him not merely as a boss, but as a visionary capable of transforming ordinary lives through financial opportunity. Jordan rewards loyalty generously. He shares wealth, celebrates victories, protects trusted associates, creates an atmosphere resembling family. However, beneath this loyalty lies constant tension. Everyone benefits financially from illegal activities. As legal pressure increases, the possibility of betrayal grows. Employees who once celebrated together begin fearing prosecution. Friendships become vulnerable. Trust becomes fragile. This conflict reflects one of the oldest themes in crime stories. Criminal organizations often appear strongest during periods of prosperity. Their greatest weakness emerges when survival requires sacrifice. The film also explores conflict within Jordan's personal relationships. His marriage illustrates how professional ambition gradually invades private life. Early relationships appear relatively stable. However, as wealth increases, emotional intimacy decreases. Material success cannot compensate for growing dishonesty. Jordan's addictions further intensify domestic conflict. Drug abuse affects his judgment. Infidelity destroys trust. His inability to separate business success from family life creates continuous emotional instability. One of the most interesting aspects of The Wolf of Wall Street is that it does not have a traditional villain. Unlike many crime films where the protagonist must overcome a powerful enemy, Martin Scorsese creates a story in which the greatest threats come from multiple directions. Some are people, some are institutions, and others exist entirely within Jordan Belfort's own mind. This layered approach makes the conflict feel more realistic because real life rarely presents a single individual responsible for another person's downfall. Instead, Jordan is surrounded by opposing forces that constantly challenge his ambitions, while simultaneously being driven toward destruction by his own decisions. The film asks an unusual question from the very beginning. Who is the real villain? Is it Jordan Belfort, the FBI, Wall Street itself, corporate greed, drug addiction, unlimited ambition, or is it a society that celebrates wealth without asking how it was earned? Rather than providing one clear answer, the film suggests that every one of these forces plays a role. The primary antagonist, is arguably Jordan Belfort himself. Although he is unquestionably the protagonist, he is also the person responsible for creating nearly every problem in the story. This dual role is one of the reasons the film remains so compelling. Traditional storytelling usually separates heroes from villains. The protagonist pursues noble goals. The antagonist creates obstacles. In The Wolf of Wall Street, these roles overlap. Jordan creates many of the obstacles he later struggles to overcome. Every legal investigation begins because of his fraud. Every damaged relationship results from his dishonesty. Every addiction grows from his own choices. Every betrayal stems from the environment he created. He spends much of the film fighting problems that he personally caused. This internal antagonism reflects one of Martin Scorsese's favorite storytelling themes. Many of his protagonists possess extraordinary talent. However, those same talents gradually become destructive. Jordan's intelligence allows him to understand markets. His charisma attracts investors. His confidence inspires employees. His ambition builds an empire. Yet each strength eventually transforms into a weakness. His intelligence becomes manipulation. His confidence becomes arrogance. His ambition becomes greed. His leadership becomes exploitation. Instead of being destroyed by external enemies alone, Jordan is consumed by exaggerated versions of his greatest qualities. This psychological conflict makes him both hero and villain simultaneously. However, Jordan is not the only antagonistic force. The financial culture surrounding him functions almost like an invisible villain throughout the story. Wall Street itself is never portrayed as a simple location. Instead, it behaves like an ecosystem that rewards unethical behavior. Young brokers quickly learned that success matters more than honesty. Large commissions receive admiration. Aggressive salesmanship receives praise. Questionable ethics often produce greater financial rewards. This environment constantly encourages Jordan's worst instincts. The system does not create his greed. Rather, it amplifies qualities already existing within him. This distinction is important. Scorsese avoids suggesting that Jordan is merely a victim of circumstance. Instead, he presents a man whose ambitions find the perfect environment in which to flourish. The culture rewards exactly the kind of behavior Jordan naturally excels at. Money becomes the dominant value. Everything else becomes secondary. Another major antagonistic force is addiction. Unlike a human villain who can be defeated through confrontation, addiction grows stronger every time Jordan believes he controls it. The film presents multiple forms of addiction operating simultaneously. Drug addiction, alcohol dependence, sexual excess, the pursuit of money, the thrill of winning, the excitement of risk. Each addiction reinforces the others. Jordan convinces himself that drugs improve his confidence. Money justifies his lifestyle. Power proves his superiority. The addictions become inseparable. Eventually, they form an invisible enemy that cannot simply be removed. Instead, they gradually reshape Jordan's entire personality. One of the most effective aspects of the film is that addiction rarely appears immediately destructive. At first, Jordan seems highly functional. He earns enormous amounts of money, builds a successful company, delivers motivational speeches, maintains relationships. This creates the dangerous illusion that his behavior has no serious consequences. Only gradually does the audience recognize the damage accumulating beneath the surface. Judgment declines. Impulses increase. Paranoia grows. Relationships deteriorate. Professional decisions become increasingly reckless. The true villain is not merely the substances. It is Jordan's belief that he remains in control. Another important antagonist is Donnie Azoff. At first glance, Donnie appears to be Jordan's closest friend and most loyal supporter. He shares Jordan's ambitions, participates in his adventures, defends him against criticism, celebrates every financial success. However, beneath this friendship lies another form of antagonism. Donnie constantly encourages Jordan's worst impulses. He rarely questions dangerous decisions. Instead, he amplifies them. If Jordan wants to celebrate, Donnie encourages a larger party. If Jordan wants drugs, Donnie wants even more. If Jordan considers taking a risk, Donnie often pushes him further. This relationship becomes psychologically significant. Donnie functions almost like the physical embodiment of temptation. Rather than balancing Jordan's personality, he reinforces every destructive instinct. Their friendship becomes an echo chamber where caution disappears completely. Neither man provides emotional restraint. Instead, they compete to demonstrate greater recklessness. This creates one of the film's most subtle antagonistic relationships. Donnie does not oppose Jordan directly. He helps destroy him by removing every remaining limit. Naomi LaPaglia, Jordan's second wife, occupies a far more complicated role. She is not a villain in the traditional sense. However, she frequently becomes an obstacle to Jordan's desires. As their marriage deteriorates, Naomi demands honesty, responsibility, respect, stability. Jordan cannot provide these qualities because they conflict directly with his lifestyle. Their relationship illustrates another recurring theme. One of the most fascinating ways to examine The Wolf of Wall Street is through the lens of story structure. Although Martin Scorsese's film is based on real events, it still follows many of the same storytelling principles found in fictional narratives. Every successful story requires progression. Characters must begin in one place, travel through increasingly difficult experiences, and emerge changed by the end. The difference is that Jordan Belfort does not follow the traditional path of a noble hero. Instead, he follows what many critics describe as an anti-hero's journey. His story mirrors the structure of classic mythological adventures while completely reversing their moral direction. Instead of seeking wisdom, he seeks wealth. Instead of fighting evil, he embraces corruption. Instead of returning home transformed into a better person, he returns having learned very little about himself. This deliberate inversion is one of the reasons the film feels so fresh despite using a familiar narrative framework. The hero's journey, originally identified by mythologist Joseph Campbell, consists of several recognizable stages that appear across countless stories throughout history. Although Jordan Belfort fits many of these stages surprisingly well, Scorsese twists nearly every one of them into something darker. Rather than celebrating personal growth, the film examines how extraordinary talent can be consumed by unchecked ambition. The first stage is the ordinary world. At the beginning of the film, Jordan is not yet the legendary Wolf of Wall Street. He is simply an ambitious young man hoping to become successful. Compared to the life he later builds, his circumstances appear ordinary. He wears modest suits, lives within reasonable means, looks inexperienced, feels nervous. Like many classic heroes, he begins with dreams much larger than his current reality. The audience immediately recognizes his hunger for success. He believes Wall Street represents unlimited opportunity. This ordinary world establishes the emotional baseline from which his transformation will begin. The next stage is the call to adventure. For Jordan, this call arrives when he enters the financial industry. Wall Street promises everything he desires: money, prestige, power, freedom. The profession itself becomes the adventure. Unlike mythical heroes who receive mysterious quests, Jordan voluntarily enters a world that appears glamorous and exciting. He believes he has found the place where extraordinary ambition will finally be rewarded. The call is irresistible because it aligns perfectly with his deepest desires. The meeting with Mark Hanna functions as the meeting with the mentor. In traditional heroes' journey stories, mentors prepare heroes for difficult challenges. They teach discipline, wisdom, courage, responsibility. Mark Hanna performs the opposite function. He introduces Jordan to indulgence, greed, drug use, emotional detachment. He teaches that clients exist primarily to generate commissions. He encourages excess instead of restraint. His advice becomes Jordan's first education in Wall Street culture. Although Hanna appears briefly, his influence echoes throughout the entire film. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Gandalf, or Morpheus in other stories, Hanna opens the protagonist's eyes to a larger world. The difference is that this world rewards moral compromise rather than heroism. Crossing the threshold occurs when Jordan leaves legitimate Wall Street after the market crash and discovers the penny stock business. This moment is far more important than simply changing jobs. It represents his permanent entry into a completely different moral universe. The old rules disappear. The possibility of earning enormous commissions becomes real. Ethical boundaries become increasingly flexible. Jordan realizes he possesses extraordinary natural talent for persuasion. Once he experiences this success, there's no realistic path back to ordinary life. Like heroes crossing into magical kingdoms, Jordan crosses into a world operating according to unfamiliar rules. The difference is that his kingdom is built on fraud rather than fantasy. The stage known as tests, allies, and enemies occupies much of the film's first half. Jordan recruits friends, builds Stratton Oakmont, develops loyal employees, finds business partners, learns increasingly sophisticated methods of financial manipulation. Every successful hero's journey introduces companions who support the protagonist. Jordan's allies include Donnie Azoff and the growing army of brokers who admire him. However, unlike traditional companions who encourage moral growth, these allies strengthen Jordan's worst instincts. Instead of questioning dangerous decisions, they celebrate them. The more successful Jordan becomes, the more people surround him with praise. This creates one of the film's greatest ironies. His allies help build his empire while simultaneously ensuring its destruction. The enemies also begin appearing during this stage. Competitors, investigators, government regulators, suspicious journalists, the FBI. Initially, however, these threats seem distant. Jordan feels nearly invincible. His victories come so easily that external opposition appears insignificant. Approaching the innermost cave traditionally represents the stage where heroes prepare for their greatest challenge. In Jordan's story, this phase occurs as Stratton Oakmont expands into an enormous financial empire. His wealth reaches unimaginable levels. He purchases mansions, luxury cars, private aircraft, a spectacular yacht. His public image becomes legendary. Yet beneath this success, warning signs multiply. Drug addiction intensifies. His marriage deteriorates. Financial crimes become increasingly elaborate. Government investigations gather momentum. Jordan continues moving deeper into danger without recognizing it. The innermost cave is not a physical location. It is the psychological trap created by limitless success. He believes he has finally conquered the world. In reality, he has entered the most dangerous phase of his journey. The ordeal is usually the central crisis where heroes face death, failure, or overwhelming defeat. Jordan experiences multiple ordeals throughout the second half of the film. The Quaalude incident nearly kills him. The yacht disaster reminds him that wealth cannot control nature. The FBI investigation threatens everything he has built. His marriage collapses. Friends become unreliable. The company begins falling apart. At first glance, The Wolf of Wall Street may not appear to be a film that relies heavily on technology or visual effects. Unlike superhero movies, science fiction epics, or fantasy adventures, there are no giant digital creatures, futuristic cities, or explosive CGI battles. However, this impression can be misleading. Martin Scorsese's film is a remarkable example of how modern filmmaking technology can be used subtly rather than spectacularly. Instead of creating imaginary worlds, the production uses visual effects, digital enhancement, practical filmmaking techniques, sophisticated camera technology, sound design, editing, and seamless post-production work to strengthen realism and immerse audiences in Jordan Belfort's chaotic world. The technology remains largely invisible, allowing viewers to focus entirely on the characters while still benefiting from countless technical innovations operating behind the scenes. One of Martin Scorsese's defining characteristics as a filmmaker is his preference for practical storytelling whenever possible. Rather than depending on visual effects to impress audiences, he believes technology should support emotion instead of replacing it. This philosophy shaped every technical decision throughout The Wolf of Wall Street. Whenever practical solutions could achieve the desired result, Scorsese generally preferred them over computer-generated imagery. As a result, many viewers finished the movie without realizing how many digital effects actually appear throughout the film. The production relied extensively on invisible visual effects. These are effects specifically designed so audiences never notice them. Unlike spectacular CGI designed to attract attention, invisible effects quietly improve realism. Buildings are extended digitally. Backgrounds are modified. Crowds become larger. Modern objects are removed. Historical details are added. Locations are enhanced. Weather conditions are adjusted. These alterations help recreate the late 1980s and early 1990s without distracting from the story. One of the biggest technical challenges involved recreating the period accurately. Because the film takes place decades before production began, many real-world locations had changed dramatically. Modern architecture, updated advertisements, contemporary vehicles, new construction. Digital technology allowed filmmakers to erase elements that did not belong to the time period. Computer-generated extensions transformed ordinary streets into convincing versions of historical New York. The audience rarely notices these changes because they blend naturally into the live-action photography. This subtle approach demonstrates one of modern visual effects' greatest strengths. The best CGI often goes completely unnoticed. The famous Stratton Oakmont offices provide another excellent example of production technology supporting storytelling. While large portions of the office were physically constructed, digital enhancements expanded the scale of certain environments. Additional employees were sometimes added. Office spaces extended. Architectural details modified. The goal was not creating fantasy, but increasing the sense of overwhelming corporate energy. The office needed to feel enormous, successful, crowded, powerful. Visual effects quietly reinforced this impression. Scorsese also relied heavily on advanced camera technology. Throughout the film, the camera moves almost constantly. Long tracking shots, smooth crane movements, Steadicam sequences, handheld moments. Every movement serves emotional storytelling rather than technical display. The production used sophisticated stabilization equipment, allowing cameras to glide through crowded offices, luxurious mansions, busy restaurants, and chaotic parties without interrupting the flow of performance. These moving shots create immersion. Instead of observing Jordan's world from a distance, audiences travel directly through it. One particularly impressive aspect of the cinematography involves its flexibility. The camera adapts continuously to Jordan's psychological state. During moments of confidence, movements appear smooth and controlled. During scenes involving heavy drug use or emotional instability, visual language becomes more unpredictable. Camera placement itself becomes part of the storytelling. Rather than simply recording performances, it reflects Jordan's changing perception of reality. Another major technological achievement lies in the film's editing. Although editing is often discussed as an artistic discipline rather than technology, modern digital editing systems made The Wolf of Wall Street's extraordinary pace possible. Editor Thelma Schoonmaker assembled nearly 3 hours of storytelling while maintaining remarkable energy from beginning to end. Rapid transitions, montages, jump cuts, freeze frames, direct narration, archival-style presentations. These techniques combine into an editing rhythm that mirrors Jordan's increasingly frantic lifestyle. Digital editing allowed thousands of individual shots to be organized with extraordinary precision. The pace rarely slows because the editing itself becomes addictive. Just as Jordan constantly seeks stimulation, the audience continually receives new visual information. Sound technology also plays an essential role in creating the film's atmosphere. Many viewers underestimate how carefully sound is constructed. Very little of what audiences hear during the final film comes directly from production recordings alone. Dialogue is cleaned, background noise adjusted, crowd sounds layered, office environments expanded. Music balanced. Every scene contains numerous individual audio elements combined during post-production. Inside Stratton Oakmont, dozens of conversations often occur simultaneously. Phones ring continuously. Employees shout across rooms. Printers operate. Music fills the background. Rather than recording all these sounds naturally, sound designers build complex audio environments piece by piece. The result feels authentic despite being carefully constructed. One of the film's greatest technical accomplishments involves maintaining clarity despite overwhelming sensory information. Even during the busiest office scenes, audiences understand Jordan's dialogue clearly. This requires sophisticated sound mixing. Every audio layer receives careful adjustment. Nothing feels random despite appearing chaotic. The famous Quaalude sequence provides one of the film's most technically impressive moments. One of the greatest achievements of The Wolf of Wall Street is its ability to create powerful emotional reactions while refusing to guide the audience toward a single interpretation. Many films tell viewers exactly how they should feel during every important moment. Heroic music signals triumph. Sad music announces tragedy. Emotional dialogue clearly defines right and wrong. Martin Scorsese deliberately avoids this approach. Instead, he creates an emotional roller coaster where excitement, laughter, admiration, disgust, anxiety, sadness, and even guilt often exist simultaneously. The audience is constantly asked to question not only Jordan Belfort's behavior, but also their own emotional responses to it. This complexity is one of the primary reasons the film continues generating discussion years after its release. The emotional journey begins almost immediately with fascination. Before audiences fully understand Jordan Belfort as a person, they're introduced to the extraordinary lifestyle surrounding him. Luxury, power, confidence, beautiful homes, expensive cars, private helicopters, endless celebrations. The opening sequence creates curiosity more than judgment. Viewers naturally wonder how someone achieved such remarkable success. This fascination is essential because it mirrors the attraction that Jordan's employees, clients, and friends experience throughout the story. Scorsese wants audiences to understand why people are drawn toward him. Without that emotional attraction, the film's later criticism would lose much of its impact. Closely connected to fascination is excitement. Very few films maintain the level of energy found throughout The Wolf of Wall Street. The camera rarely stops moving. Music constantly drives momentum. Scenes transition rapidly. Characters speak with extraordinary confidence. Every success appears larger than the previous one. This creates genuine exhilaration. The audience often feels energized simply by watching Jordan's world unfold. Even viewers who strongly disagree with his morality may find themselves captivated by the excitement surrounding him. This emotional contradiction lies at the heart of the film. Scorsese intentionally makes corruption appear seductive before exposing its consequences. Another dominant emotion throughout the film is humor. The Wolf of Wall Street is frequently remembered as one of Martin Scorsese's funniest movies despite dealing with financial fraud, addiction, broken families, and criminal behavior. The humor serves several important emotional purposes. First, it lowers the audience's emotional defenses. People naturally become more receptive when laughing. Second, it reflects Jordan's own perspective. He rarely views his behavior as tragic. Instead, he experiences much of his life as exciting and entertaining. Finally, the comedy creates discomfort. Many scenes involve behavior that should not be funny. Yet audiences laugh anyway. This emotional conflict forces viewers to examine their own reactions. Perhaps no scene illustrates this better than the famous Quaalude sequence. Jordan becomes almost completely unable to control his body. His movements become absurd. Simple tasks become impossible. His attempts to crawl toward his car create some of the funniest physical comedy in recent cinema. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance transforms physical impairment into a masterpiece of visual humor. At the same time, the situation is genuinely dangerous. Jordan is heavily intoxicated. He drives while completely impaired. He risks harming himself and others. The audience laughs while recognizing that the circumstances are deeply disturbing. This mixture of comedy and danger creates emotional complexity rarely achieved in mainstream cinema. As the story progresses, admiration begins competing with discomfort. Jordan is undeniably talented. His intelligence, his communication skills, his leadership, his confidence, his ability to inspire others. These qualities are genuinely impressive. Even viewers who reject his ethics often acknowledge his remarkable abilities. Scorsese intentionally refuses to portray Jordan as incompetent. His success requires extraordinary talent. This creates another emotional contradiction. The audience admires qualities being used for destructive purposes. This tension becomes one of the film's defining emotional experiences. The emotional tone gradually shifts as Jordan's addictions become increasingly severe. Early drug use appears recreational. Later it becomes dependency. The audience begins noticing subtle behavioral changes. Poor judgment, impulsiveness, paranoia, emotional instability. The excitement that once felt liberating slowly becomes exhausting. Scorsese carefully manages this transition. He never suddenly announces that Jordan has reached a breaking point. Instead, viewers gradually realize that celebration has transformed into compulsion. The emotional atmosphere becomes increasingly uncomfortable. Anxiety emerges as another major emotional force. Initially, Jordan appears almost invincible. Every obstacle seems temporary. Every challenge produces another opportunity. However, once the FBI investigation gains momentum, the audience begins anticipating inevitable consequences. This anticipation creates sustained tension. Unlike action films where danger often arrives through violence, The Wolf of Wall Street generates suspense through uncertainty. Will Jordan finally get caught? Will his friends betray him? Will his marriage survive? Will addiction destroy his judgment completely? The audience constantly senses approaching disaster without knowing exactly when it will arrive. One of the film's strongest emotional achievements involves disappointment. Not disappointment in the filmmaking, but disappointment in Jordan himself. Repeatedly, he receives opportunities to change. He could reduce criminal activity, repair damaged relationships, control his addictions, accept responsibility. Each opportunity briefly suggests personal growth. Each time, Jordan chooses excess instead. The audience gradually realizes that his greatest obstacle is not circumstance, but character. This realization becomes emotionally painful because viewers have already invested considerable time following his journey. Many people naturally hope protagonists will improve. Jordan continually rejects improvement. His repeated failures become increasingly frustrating. The emotional impact of Jordan's marriages deserves special attention. His relationships humanize him during the early portions of the story. One of the reasons The Wolf of Wall Street stands out among modern biographical films is the way it adapts its source material. Rather than attempting to recreate Jordan Belfort's memoir word for word, Martin Scorsese and screenwriter Terrence Winter approached the autobiography as a foundation rather than a blueprint. They understood that a memoir and a feature film are fundamentally different forms of storytelling. A book allows readers to spend hundreds of pages exploring thoughts, memories, and details, while a film must communicate ideas visually and maintain dramatic momentum over a limited running time. As a result, the adaptation remains remarkably faithful to the spirit of Belfort's story while making numerous changes that improve pacing, strengthen character development, simplify complex events, and create a more cohesive cinematic experience. Jordan Belfort's memoir, The Wolf of Wall Street, was published in 2007 after he had served time in prison for securities fraud and money laundering. The book immediately attracted attention because of its unusual tone. Unlike many autobiographies written after criminal convictions, Belfort's memoir was not built around remorse or redemption. Instead, it was energetic, humorous, brutally honest in some areas, and surprisingly unapologetic in others. Belfort described outrageous events with confidence, often emphasizing the absurdity of his own behavior while allowing readers to decide how they should judge him. This narrative style greatly influenced the film. Rather than presenting Jordan as either a traditional hero or a straightforward villain, Scorsese preserved the memoir's first-person perspective. Throughout the movie, Jordan frequently speaks directly to the audience. He narrates events, explains financial concepts, interrupts scenes, corrects assumptions, makes jokes. This technique comes directly from the tone of the book, where Belfort writes as though he is telling extraordinary stories to a friend sitting across the table. Maintaining this conversational style became one of the adaptation's greatest strengths. One of the largest differences between the memoir and the film involves structure. The book contains enormous amounts of detail. Jordan spends considerable time describing daily routines, business operations, relationships, legal matters, financial strategies, and countless stories that would have been impossible to include in a single feature film. Screenwriter Terrence Winter therefore faced the challenge of deciding which events best represented Jordan's overall journey. Instead of attempting to include everything, Winter selected episodes that clearly illustrated the major stages of Belfort's rise and fall. The screenplay focuses on progression rather than completeness. Every included event serves the larger narrative. Every omitted event helps maintain pacing. This selective approach is common in successful adaptations. Faithfulness to emotional truth often matters more than reproducing every factual detail. Another major adaptation decision involved simplifying the timeline. In reality, many events occurred over several years. Business developments, relationships, investigations, financial transactions, personal struggles, all unfolded gradually. The film compresses this chronology significantly. Different events sometimes appear much closer together than they actually occurred. This compression creates stronger dramatic momentum. Rather than constantly interrupting the story with explanations about passing time, the audience experiences Jordan's rise as one continuous acceleration. The effect mirrors his psychological experience. His life feels increasingly fast, increasingly overwhelming, increasingly difficult to control. The adaptation also combines certain real-life individuals into composite characters. This is a common technique in biographical filmmaking. Instead of introducing dozens of relatively minor figures, screenwriters often merge characteristics from multiple real people into fewer fictionalized characters. Doing so reduces confusion while preserving the overall truth of events. Some supporting characters in The Wolf of Wall Street, therefore, represent combinations of several individuals who interacted with Belfort during different periods of his career. This streamlining allows audiences to focus on relationships rather than constantly remembering new names. One of the most significant adaptation choices concerns Jordan Belfort himself. The memoir naturally presents events through his own perspective. The film preserves this point of view almost completely. However, Scorsese also understands the limitations of unreliable narration. Although Jordan tells the story confidently, audiences frequently witness evidence contradicting his self-image. He describes himself as generous, loyal, brilliant, fearless. The visuals often reveal arrogance, impulsiveness, self-deception, emotional instability. This subtle separation between narration and visual storytelling allows viewers to question Jordan's version of events without requiring another narrator to challenge him directly. It is one of the film's smartest adaptation strategies. The movie also increases the importance of visual storytelling compared to the memoir. Books rely upon description. Films rely upon images. Instead of spending pages explaining Jordan's wealth, Scorsese simply shows it. Massive mansions, luxury yachts, private helicopters, designer clothing, extravagant parties. The audience immediately understands the scale of Jordan's success without lengthy explanation. Similarly, emotional deterioration becomes increasingly visible through Leonardo DiCaprio's physical performance. Drug addiction, stress, fatigue, desperation. These qualities appear through behavior rather than internal monologue. Cinema transforms psychological information into visual experience. Humor represents another area where adaptation plays a crucial role. Jordan's memoir already contains remarkable comedic energy. His writing often emphasizes the ridiculousness of real events. Scorsese amplifies this humor through performance, editing, music, and timing. Scenes that occupy only a few paragraphs in the book become unforgettable cinematic sequences. The famous Quaalude incident provides perhaps the best example. Although the memoir describes Jordan's physical condition during the experience, Leonardo DiCaprio transforms it into one of modern cinema's greatest examples of physical comedy. Martin Scorsese carefully stages every movement, every facial expression, every failed attempt to stand. One of the reasons The Wolf of Wall Street remains highly rewatchable is that it rewards careful observation. On a first viewing, audiences are often overwhelmed by the film's non-stop pace, rapid dialogue, extravagant parties, outrageous humor, and constant stream of unforgettable moments. There's so much happening on screen that many subtle details go unnoticed. Martin Scorsese deliberately fills the film with visual clues, recurring motifs, symbolic imagery, foreshadowing, references to real history, callbacks to earlier scenes, and character details that become more meaningful after multiple viewings. Unlike traditional adventure films that hide obvious Easter eggs referencing other movies, The Wolf of Wall Street uses hidden details to deepen its themes, reinforce character development, and quietly reveal Jordan Belfort's psychological decline. Many of these details are invisible during a first viewing because the audience is distracted by the film's overwhelming energy, but they become increasingly apparent with repeated viewings. One of the first hidden details appears during the opening narration. Jordan immediately introduces himself by showing audiences his wealth. Luxury cars, helicopters, massive homes, beautiful women, expensive suits. Everything presented reflects material success. Notice, however, what is absent. Very little attention is given to meaningful friendships, family, personal happiness, peace. The opening montage quietly establishes Jordan's value system long before he openly discusses it. Everything important in his life can be measured materially. Everything emotional occupies the background. This visual imbalance becomes one of the film's central themes. Another subtle detail involves Jordan's direct conversations with the audience. Throughout the film, he frequently breaks the fourth wall. He explains financial concepts, corrects information, interrupts scenes, makes jokes. At first, this technique appears simply entertaining. However, repeated viewings reveal something deeper. Jordan behaves exactly like an expert salesman. He does not merely tell his story. He actively sells it. He controls information, frames events favorably, minimizes uncomfortable facts, distracts viewers with humor. Even while admitting criminal behavior, he often encourages admiration through confidence and charisma. The audience unknowingly becomes another customer listening to one of Jordan Belfort's sales pitches. Scorsese quietly turns viewers into participants rather than observers. One fascinating recurring detail involves mirrors. Jordan appears near mirrors or reflective surfaces numerous times throughout the film. Luxury bathrooms, office windows, bedroom mirrors, car windows, highly polished furniture. These reflections often occur during moments of personal transition. Although never emphasized directly, mirrors symbolize Jordan's relationship with identity. Rather than encouraging self-reflection, they often reinforce image. Jordan consistently cares more about how he appears than who he actually is. The reflections become reminders that appearance dominates his worldview. Money itself becomes visual symbolism rather than simple currency. Cash fills nearly every environment. Office desks, briefcases, living rooms, bedrooms, yachts, cars. Instead of functioning merely as wealth, the constant presence of money gradually transforms into background decoration. This change carries symbolic importance. When enormous stacks of cash become ordinary scenery, audiences recognize how completely Jordan's perception has changed. Extraordinary wealth loses emotional significance because he has become psychologically accustomed to it. The audience experiences a similar process. At first, mountains of money appear shocking. Later, they become normal. Scorsese intentionally mirrors Jordan's desensitization. One particularly clever visual pattern involved Jordan's clothing. Early in the film, his suits appear relatively conservative, professional, simple, appropriate. As his fortune grows, colors become brighter, patterns become bolder, accessories become more expensive. Everything about his appearance becomes increasingly extravagant. This progression reflects his expanding ego. By the later portions of the film, Jordan almost dresses like a celebrity rather than a businessman. Costume design quietly tracks psychological development without requiring dialogue. Donnie Azoff contains numerous hidden behavioral details. During initial viewings, audiences primarily remember his outrageous personality. Repeated viewings reveal that Donnie almost never introduces restraint into any situation. Whenever Jordan hesitates, Donnie encourages greater excess. More drugs, larger risks, bigger celebrations. He rarely proposes moderation. This consistency transforms Donnie into something symbolic. Rather than functioning simply as Jordan's friend, he becomes the physical embodiment of temptation. Every scene involving Donnie pushes Jordan further away from self-control. One subtle recurring motif involves telephones. Phones appear constantly throughout the movie. Employees celebrate successful calls. Jordan motivates brokers through phone conversations. Deals happen through telephones. Lives change through telephones. The device becomes symbolic. Jordan's extraordinary power comes almost entirely from communication. His voice generates wealth. His words persuade strangers. His sales ability creates his empire. The telephone, therefore, represents far more than business equipment. It symbolizes Jordan's greatest weapon. Interestingly, as legal pressure increases, phones gradually shift from symbols of opportunity into symbols of danger. Calls increasingly involve investigations, warnings, lawyers, bad news. The same object acquires entirely different emotional meaning. Scorsese also uses animals symbolically. Several scenes include animals associated with wealth and status. Exotic pets, luxury imagery. Jordan often surrounds himself with symbols of ownership. Animals function almost like expensive accessories. This reflects another aspect of Jordan's worldview. Everything becomes something to possess. People, homes, cars, businesses, even living creatures become evidence of success. The famous office celebrations contain dozens of easily missed details. Background employees constantly perform outrageous actions unrelated to the central dialogue. Some dance, others argue, some throw money, others entertain clients. Numerous small stories unfold simultaneously. The Wolf of Wall Street is not only a story about money. It also became one of the most financially successful and commercially significant films of Martin Scorsese's career. While the movie explores greed, excess, corruption, and the pursuit of unimaginable wealth, it also achieved remarkable success in the real-world film industry. Upon its release in December 2013, the film exceeded many commercial expectations, became a major awards contender, generated worldwide discussion, and continued earning revenue long after its theatrical run ended through home entertainment, streaming platforms, television licensing, and digital rentals. Its financial story is particularly fascinating because it demonstrates how an unconventional, nearly 3-hour, adults-only biographical black comedy about financial crime managed to become one of the biggest box office successes ever directed by Martin Scorsese. Before examining its commercial performance, it is important to understand the challenges the project faced before release. The Wolf of Wall Street was never designed as a traditional blockbuster. It contained no superheroes, no major action set pieces, no fantasy elements, no family-friendly content. Instead, it featured lengthy dialogue scenes, complex financial subject matter, heavy profanity, explicit sexual content, drug use, dark comedy, a running time approaching 3 hours. From a business perspective, These characteristics usually limit a movie's commercial potential. Longer films reduce the number of daily screenings cinemas can schedule. An adults-only rating excludes younger audiences. Financial dramas rarely attract the same global attention as action franchises. Despite these obstacles, the filmmakers believed the film possessed something equally valuable: star power. Martin Scorsese had already established himself as one of cinema's most respected directors. Leonardo DiCaprio had become one of Hollywood's most recognizable leading actors. Their previous collaborations had consistently attracted both audiences and critics. This creative partnership became one of the project's greatest commercial advantages. By 2013, audiences trusted that a Scorsese and DiCaprio collaboration would offer something ambitious, entertaining, and memorable. That reputation significantly increased anticipation before release. The production budget has been widely reported at approximately $100 million. For a dialogue-driven biographical drama, this represented a substantial investment. Unlike many films with similar budgets, however, much of the money did not fund elaborate visual effects. Instead, expenses were concentrated in several different areas: large ensemble casts, extensive location shooting, luxury production design, period recreation, costumes, vehicles, yachts, aircraft, massive crowd scenes, music licensing, long shooting schedules, and salaries for internationally recognized talent. The film's extravagant appearance required enormous logistical coordination. Although viewers often associate high budgets with CGI-heavy productions, The Wolf of Wall Street demonstrates that realism can be equally expensive. Recreating the world of Jordan Belfort demanded extraordinary attention to detail. The release strategy also played an important role in the film's success. Instead of opening during the quieter months of the year, the film premiered during the competitive holiday season. December releases often benefit from extended theatrical runs because audiences have more free time during holiday periods. Award season also begins attracting significant media attention. A successful December release can remain in cinemas well into the following year if positive reviews and award nominations generate continued interest. This strategy proved highly effective. Early marketing emphasized several key elements: Leonardo DiCaprio's transformative performance, Martin Scorsese's direction, the outrageous true story, the unbelievable lifestyle, the humor. Rather than presenting the movie solely as a serious crime drama, promotional material highlighted its energy and entertainment value. Trailers showcased extravagant parties, fast-paced editing, comedic moments, luxury lifestyles, motivational speeches. The campaign successfully communicated that audiences would experience something very different from a traditional financial thriller. One of the film's greatest commercial strengths was word of mouth. Many viewers left theaters discussing specific scenes: the Quaalude sequence, Jordan's motivational speeches, the office celebrations, the yacht sequence, the ending. These unforgettable moments encouraged new audiences to see the film. Social conversation became free advertising. Even viewers shocked by the film's explicit content often recommended it because of its originality and ambition. Controversy itself also contributed to public awareness. Some critics argued that the film glorified excess. Others believed it functioned as satire. This debate kept the movie in public discussion for months. Commercially, controversy often increases curiosity. People become interested in forming their own opinions. The film therefore benefited from extensive media coverage extending far beyond ordinary movie reviews. At the worldwide box office, The Wolf of Wall Street performed exceptionally well. It earned nearly $400 million globally, making it one of Martin Scorsese's highest-grossing films. For comparison, many prestigious dramas struggle to earn even half that amount. Considering its adult rating, lengthy runtime, and unconventional subject matter, this performance exceeded industry expectations. Domestic audiences contributed significantly to overall earnings, reflecting Leonardo DiCaprio's popularity in North America and strong interest in Wall Street stories following the global financial crisis. International markets also embraced the film enthusiastically. Europe proved especially important. Many countries already possess strong appreciation for Scorsese's work. DiCaprio's worldwide popularity further strengthened overseas attendance. The themes of ambition, wealth, corruption, and financial excess translated effectively across cultures. Although specific financial systems differ internationally, audiences everywhere understood the universal appeal of success and the dangers agreed. This broad thematic accessibility helped transform the movie into a global commercial success rather than merely an American hit. Another factor contributing to profitability involved awards recognition. One of the most remarkable aspects of The Wolf of Wall Street is the way its popularity has continued to grow long after its original theatrical release. While many successful films enjoy a brief period of public attention before gradually fading from cultural conversation, Martin Scorsese's 2013 film has experienced the opposite. More than a decade after its release, it remains one of the most quoted, discussed, analyzed, shared, and debated films on the internet. Its fan community extends far beyond traditional movie enthusiasts, reaching business professionals, entrepreneurs, finance students, sales trainers, meme creators, filmmakers, psychologists, and casual audiences who continue discovering the movie through streaming platforms. This unusually broad fandom has helped transform The Wolf of Wall Street from a successful film into a lasting cultural phenomenon. One of the primary reasons for this enduring popularity is the personality of Jordan Belfort himself. Whether audiences admire him, criticize him, or feel conflicted about him, very few people find him boring. He is energetic, confident, funny, intelligent, charismatic, outrageous. His personality dominates nearly every scene. This makes him an endlessly discussable character. Fans frequently debate whether Jordan should be viewed primarily as a criminal, an anti-hero, a cautionary example, or a product of the financial culture surrounding him. The fact that no single answer satisfies everyone keeps discussions alive years after release. The film's fandom differs significantly from many traditional movie communities. Fantasy franchises often build fandom around fictional universes. Superhero films encourage discussions about powers, characters, and future stories. The Wolf of Wall Street creates discussion around ideas instead. Ambition, success, greed, ethics, salesmanship, addiction, capitalism, personal responsibility. Fans often spend as much time debating these themes as they do discussing the film itself. This intellectual engagement gives the community unusual longevity. One of the largest online communities surrounding the movie exists through social media. Short clips from the film appear constantly across video sharing platforms. Motivational speeches, comedic moments, Leonardo DiCaprio's physical performances, office celebrations, the famous "Sell Me This Pen" scene. These moments continue reaching millions of viewers who may not have even watched the entire film. Many younger audiences first encounter The Wolf of Wall Street through short video clips before eventually watching the complete movie. This constant circulation introduces the film to entirely new generations. Perhaps no aspect of the fandom has become more recognizable than the internet memes inspired by the film. Jordan's facial expressions, his reactions, his motivational speeches, his exaggerated confidence. Numerous scenes have been transformed into memes used far beyond discussions about cinema. People use images from the film to joke about business, investing, career success, financial mistakes, luxury lifestyles, negotiation, confidence. The memes often remove scenes entirely from their original context. Someone unfamiliar with a movie may still recognize individual images because they have become part of internet culture. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance plays a major role in sustaining fan enthusiasm. Many viewers consider Jordan Belfort one of his greatest performances. Fans frequently discuss the remarkable range he demonstrates throughout the film. Comedy, drama, physical acting, improvisation, public speaking, emotional breakdowns. Each aspect attracts admiration. The famous Quaalude sequence alone has generated countless analysis videos examining DiCaprio's physical precision and commitment. Many actors receive praise for emotional scenes. DiCaprio receives equal admiration for making complete physical loss of control both believable and hilarious. Another major area of fan discussion centers around Martin Scorsese's direction. Film enthusiasts often analyze his camera movements, editing rhythm, music choices, long tracking shots, narration, visual symbolism. The movie has become a frequent subject in filmmaking courses, online video essays, podcasts, and cinema discussions. Aspiring directors study its pacing. Editors examine its structure. Screenwriters analyze its dialogue. The technical craftsmanship continues attracting new admirers every year. One fascinating aspect of the fandom is its connection to entrepreneurship and sales culture. Many business seminars reference scenes from the film. Sales trainers occasionally discuss Jordan's communication techniques. Entrepreneurs analyze his confidence, leadership style, persuasion methods, public speaking ability. Of course, most serious discussions also acknowledge the ethical failures surrounding these skills. Fans often separate Jordan's communication talent from his criminal behavior. This distinction creates ongoing debate. Can effective techniques be admired independently from the person using them? There is no universal agreement. Financial professionals also form an important part of the fan community. Some appreciate the film's energetic depiction of stockbroking culture. Others criticize its exaggerations. Many discuss how accurately it portrays certain aspects of financial sales during the late 20th century. Former brokers occasionally share personal stories online, comparing real Wall Street experiences with scenes from the movie. These conversations help maintain the film's relevance within professional circles. One of the most interesting fan debates concerns whether the movie glorifies Jordan Belfort. This discussion has continued almost continuously since the film's release. Some viewers argue that the film celebrates wealth and excess because so much screen time focuses on luxury lifestyles and outrageous entertainment. Others believe Scorsese intentionally presents temptation before exposing its consequences. Still others argue that the movie trusts audiences to make their own moral judgments rather than providing simple answers. The absence of a definitive conclusion ensures that this conversation remains active. Film scholars, critics, and casual viewers often reach completely different interpretations. The ending has generated especially intense discussion. Jordan leaves prison, returns to motivational speaking, addresses another audience. When The Wolf of Wall Street premiered in 2013, it immediately became one of the most talked about films of the year. Critics praised its extraordinary energy, Leonardo DiCaprio's unforgettable performance, Martin Scorsese's confident direction, and its fearless willingness to push boundaries. At the same time, the film generated intense controversy. Many viewers questioned whether it effectively criticized Jordan Belfort's criminal lifestyle or whether it unintentionally celebrated it. Debates surrounding the film often became just as famous as the movie itself. More than a decade later, however, The Wolf of Wall Street occupies a very different place in cinema history. While many of the original discussions continue, audiences now approach the film with the benefit of time, historical distance, and a deeper understanding of both its artistic intentions and its cultural impact. Rather than fading into history, the film has become one of the defining works of 21st century American cinema. Perhaps the most significant change since 2013 is the movie's critical reputation. Upon release, reviews were overwhelmingly positive, but they often focused on immediate reactions. Critics discussed the shocking humor, the explicit content, the extraordinary running time, the wild performances, the controversial subject matter. Today, discussions tend to examine deeper themes. Modern critics are more interested in how Scorsese constructs moral ambiguity, how the film manipulates audience sympathy, how its visual style reflects addiction, how its editing creates psychological momentum. The conversation has shifted from asking whether the movie is offensive toward asking why it continues provoking such powerful responses. This represents a significant evolution in its reputation. The question of whether the film glorifies Jordan Belfort remains one of its most frequently discussed topics. When a movie first appeared, many viewers argued that Jordan experienced too much luxury and entertainment without sufficient punishment. Some believed audiences would admire him instead of criticizing him. Others argued that Scorsese deliberately trusted viewers to recognize Jordan's emptiness without needing explicit moral lessons. Years later, this debate continues, but it has become considerably more sophisticated. Many modern analysts distinguish between depiction and endorsement. Showing attractive lifestyles does not automatically mean approving them. Scorsese's refusal to provide simple moral guidance is now often viewed as one of the film's greatest artistic strengths rather than a weakness. The passage of time has also changed how audiences interpret Jordan Belfort himself. In 2013, many viewers concentrated primarily on his outrageous behavior, his wealth, his parties, his confidence. Today, more people notice his insecurity, his emotional dependence upon validation, his inability to experience lasting satisfaction, his gradual psychological collapse. Repeated viewings reveal that Jordan's life becomes increasingly empty despite growing financial success. This deeper understanding has shifted attention away from simple admiration towards psychological analysis. Modern audiences frequently describe Jordan less as an ideal and more as a warning. Another important factor in the film's reassessment involves changing attitudes toward wealth and financial culture. Since the film's release, conversations about economic inequality, corporate ethics, financial responsibility, and wealth concentration have become increasingly prominent around the world. These broader social discussions influence how viewers interpret Jordan's story. Many audiences now view the movie as reflecting larger problems within financial systems rather than merely documenting one individual's criminal behavior. Jordan becomes symbolic. He represents a culture rewarding ambition regardless of ethics. This broader interpretation gives the film renewed relevance. The rise of social media has also transformed the movie's cultural position. When The Wolf of Wall Street first appeared, platforms emphasizing short-form video and viral content were far less influential than they are today. Now, countless scenes circulate online independently from the complete film. Motivational speeches, comedic moments, reaction shots, business advice. These clips introduce millions of people to the movie. Interestingly, many viewers first encounter Jordan Belfort through isolated scenes rather than watching the entire narrative. This changes perception. A short motivational speech may appear inspirational when removed from its broader context. The complete film presents a much more complicated portrait. Modern audiences therefore often discuss how social media alters interpretation by separating memorable moments from the larger story. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance has also gained even greater appreciation over time. Although widely praised upon release, many critics now rank Jordan Belfort among the finest performances of his career. His combination of physical comedy, emotional intensity, dramatic range, and remarkable charisma appears even more impressive after repeated viewing. The famous Quaalude sequence, in particular, is now frequently cited as one of the greatest examples of physical acting in contemporary American cinema. Film schools, acting classes, performance analysis videos all regularly reference DiCaprio's work. Time has elevated appreciation for its technical difficulty. Martin Scorsese's direction has undergone similar reassessment. Initially, attention often focused upon the movie's outrageous content. Today, many discussions emphasize craftsmanship, the remarkable editing rhythm, sophisticated camera movement, narrative structure, music selection, visual symbolism. Scorsese's ability to sustain nearly 3 hours of relentless energy now receives even greater admiration. Many younger filmmakers openly acknowledge The Wolf of Wall Street as a significant influence upon their own work. This growing recognition strengthens its artistic legacy. The film has also become increasingly important within academic study. Universities regularly include it in courses examining film editing, narrative structure, media ethics, business culture, psychology, addiction, capitalism, masculinity. Because the movie operates successfully on so many thematic levels, professors frequently use it to encourage discussion across multiple disciplines. Very few mainstream films achieve comparable educational versatility. Another fascinating aspect of modern reassessment involves audience age.